You spend over 40 years wearing the US Army uniform, right? And how does that kind of service shape a person's identity?
For me, the way the Army shaped my identity is through the training I received. It gave me confidence. It gave me confidence in leading other people.
I guess to piggyback on that, what would be your message to the generation of today?
Work on your interpersonal skills. Emotional intelligence is very, very important.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions civilians have about the US Army?
I think the biggest misconception is that you simply give people orders and they're going to follow the order. That's a misconception.
Any plans of a fourth book?
That's going to focus on mindset, positive versus negative mindset, a growth versus a fixed mindset, an abundant versus a scarcity mindset, and an offensive versus a defensive mindset.
All right, we're live. We are live. And today we have the privileged opportunity, the honor to speak to Major General John L. Gronski. He has multiple degrees. He got multiple books. He's got multiple accolades. There's just so much to say and so much to talk about today. And he did his just as much of a extensive research that we did. It seems like he went back and watched an episode of ours, so he knows already that he is now our second guest that we've never met before, that hopefully we do have the privilege of one day meeting. Man, Mr. Gronski, please, thank you so much, and I hope you're doing well today, and I hope you have an even better day after this exchange.
Hey, Rana, I really appreciate being a guest on your podcast. Please call me John. And one thing you didn't mention, you mentioned Major General, but I am retired. I retired in 2019 from the United States Army. And again, it's just a pleasure to be a guest on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, certainly. And now you've also transitioned into being an entrepreneur. You are the founder and CEO of Leader Grove, right? Which is,
Yeah.
I believe it's a, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's a consulting firm, I believe, correct?
But yes, it's a leadership consulting firm. With my primary focus, conducting leadership training for organizations who want to improve that the leaders they have working, who want to improve the leaders they have working for their organization. So I love doing the leadership training because it allows me an opportunity to share many of the lessons I've learned over many years of leading men and women.
That's lovely. That's awesome. And what, I guess to start with, it's interesting to see how both of those roles kind of correlate with one another, right? It's leadership at the end of the day that you focus on. So I guess what thought sparked the idea of transitioning into this phase of becoming an entrepreneur, becoming, the founder and CEO of the company that you now run?
Yeah, well, when I retired in 2019, after spending 40 years in the Army, both on active duty and in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, I needed to have a purpose. My last assignment in the U.S. Army was on active duty at U.S. Army Europe. I was one of the deputy commanding generals there. I was deputy commanding general for National Guard. And I come back from Europe and find myself in northeastern Pennsylvania. And after having a large team around me and a clear purpose when I was serving in Europe, the team I had around me when I came back to Pennsylvania was my wife and my dog. And I wasn't sure of what my purpose was going to be. So I thought long and hard about it. And I concluded that my purpose should be to help leaders who want to improve become better leaders. And just based on my leadership experience of serving in the Army, because in the United States Army develops leaders. And in the United States Army, whenever you get promoted from one position to another, and you're about to lead more people than you led in your previous assignment or your previous rank, the Army always provides leadership training as we progress up through the ranks. And I found after I left the Army that very few civilian organizations, civilian companies, and really very few law enforcement organizations provide leadership training to their people as they progress up through the ranks of their organizations. And I found that there was really a need there. And I was happy to try to fill that need for many of these organizations that are looking for developing leaders through the training I provide.
That's lovely. I love that. I think I don't think that, see, a lot of people, they'll start consulting firms, or they'll become consultants, but then there's story behind Leader Grove, right? There's story behind what it is that you do. So I think that just adds so much more weight and legitimacy, and something that just can't be replicated, I feel like. So that's really neat.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You know, Rana and Nishant, the thing is, yes, I have several degrees, 2 master's degrees, etc. I did work on a PhD in organizational leadership, but I did not complete that degree. But what I found is most people who attend my leadership training appreciate the fact that I have operational leadership experience rather than just some type of academic knowledge of what leadership is. Because don't get me wrong, you could have a PhD in organizational leadership. Some people with those type of degrees have done research, but they've never really led any amount of people in an organization. And myself, I've led people, starting as a platoon leader from around 40 people to a company commander of 150 people to a battalion commander, 850, brigade commander, 5,000, division commander, 15,000. So I certainly have operational leadership experience, which gives me credibility with those who are in the training that I conduct.
How, like, as you mentioned, like, how is it difficult, or like, how do you train someone just by words to be ready for what's going to happen on the field?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. For example, one of my key training events I do is a 2-day leadership workshop based on my leadership philosophy of character, competence, and resilience. And I always tell people that you're not going to become an expert leader by going through a 2-day workshop that I conduct. The leadership journey has to be one of continuous learning, by going to other workshops, by looking for mentors in your life who could help develop you as a leader, by listening to podcasts like this one, by reading leadership books, and a good leader is a continuous learner, and a good leader never stops learning. So it's really a journey through life. As a matter of fact, I'm almost 70 years old now. As I said, I've led men and women for well over 40 years, and I'm still trying to become a better leader. I really believe I could still improve in terms of my leadership ability. So I continue to network with people that I respect. I continue to look for mentors in my life. I continue to study leadership. And I don't think that leadership journey ever stops. I like to say, if you're going to be a good leader, you have to be a continuous learner. You have to understand that you're never an expert in leadership. Things change. Generations change. The generation that is out there today that are entering the workforce is not like the generation of mine when I entered the workforce. So you've got to stay up on things and continue to learn and grow.
I guess to piggyback on that, what would be your message to the generation of today? Like, what's one thing that you see that they can improve on as a whole?
I think, work on your interpersonal skills. Emotional intelligence is very, very important. And really, I think it all comes down to, you have to be a character-based person. You have to be a character-based leader, which means you have to understand what your values are. You really have to think long and hard about what are the 3 to 5 core values that you have that you're going to stand by not only good times, but also in tough times. So, you've got to focus on your character. You have to focus on being trustworthy. You have to focus on having those elements of emotional intelligence to be, first of all, understand yourself, control your own emotions, so then you can be empathetic and understand others, and develop relationships with other people. And it takes a lot of work to develop those relationships. You got to work at it. And then to some young people, I have to say, you got to show up. You just got to show up. If you get a job, you got to put forth your total effort in that job. You shouldn't always be looking at the next promotion. I think if you try to work hard at the current job you have, promotions are going to continue. People are going to see that you're a good worker, that you're trying to continue to learn. They'll be looking to see if you're a good teammate, that you try to help other people on your team. If you do those things, you are going to get promoted, and you are going to continue to go up in an organization. But you got to show up. You got to come to work on time. Just those simple things.
Yes.
Those simple things. You got to come to work on time. You got to show up. You got to help your teammates. You got to respect the company that you work for and put forth your best effort. If you do those things, you're going to be successful. I truly believe that.
I love that. I think my biggest gripe with today's generation is, the new generation, is the amount of nonchalance that's celebrated. I don't like that everyone's so nonchalant, So it's frustrating when you see people just act like it's cool to not care.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rana. Yeah, you have to have that purpose, and you've got to be intense about your purpose. You have to care about what your purpose is, and you really have to care about other people. And I think you have to care about what other people think of you. You have to be conscious about building a reputation. You have to be conscious about being a person that other people want to be around, but there's a caveat to that. As a leader, it's not about being everybody's buddy. It's about being a leader that people respect. And if you hold people to the standards that are the standards within your organization, then people are going to respect you. And I think that's the key. You don't need to be liked by everybody, but you need to be respected.
Hey, Nishant, have you heard about iCover Direct?
No, what's that?
Of course you have, you silly. We work for the company. If you want life insurance in as quick as 5 minutes with no agents, no medical exams, check out iCoverDirect.com. That's iCoverdirect.com, and go through the application process just to see what your quote looks like, what your monthly premium looks like. It doesn't take long at all, truly. I mean, the amount of times that I've gone through it just to, see what it looks like, to remind myself, or literally to remind myself how wonderful and quick the process is. I do it. I've done it so many times, and it's so simple, so quick, so easy. I still have a hard time believing it to this day. It doesn't have to be hard. You don't need anybody's help, but if you do need help, you could reach out to us via the phone number that you'll see in the application process, or via email, or literally just reach out to Nishant and I, however which way, whether it's email, LinkedIn, find our personal socials. It's not that hard. And yeah, Nishant?
And trust me, it's 2026. Getting a life insurance policy for your family is the best gift you can give them this year. So trust me, you don't even have to leave your house. All you need is your mobile phone or your computer, right? Go to iCoverDirect.com. No medical exams, no documents. You can ignore everything, right? All you have to do is answer a few personal questions, a few medical questions, and that's it. That's it. In less than 5 minutes, you can secure your family. No, I was actually doing a bit of research, and I was going through the whole website, right? And I read your leadership philosophy, character, competence, and resilience. I really like that. So can you just explain more about it?
Yeah, when I talk about character, I'm talking about having values. I already talked about the values. I'm talking about really focusing on cultivating trust with people in your organization, and then showing people that you care about them. That you're willing to put the needs of your followers ahead of your own needs. when I talk about competence, I'm not talking about tactical or technical competence of whatever industry you're in, but I'm talking about the competence of providing a vision and a direction to those you lead, the competence of making decisions and having the courage to make difficult decisions, and also the competence of communicating well to those you lead. And then when I talk about resilience, I'm talking about having positive energy, and being optimistic as a leader. When I talk about leader optimism, I'm talking about the fact that leaders have to believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today. Even when you're in a crisis, even when things are going wrong, you have to believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today, and have a believable plan, a plan that's believable to your followers to go along with that optimism. I'm also talking about fitness. When I talk about being a resilient leader, and yes, I'm talking about physical fitness, but I'm also talking about mental fitness, emotional fitness, and spiritual fitness. And I believe those things have to be worked on in order to build up your own resiliency. And then I'm also talking about the fact that if you want to be a resilient leader, you've got to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You have to move out of your comfort zone. You have to train to make it through difficult situations. You have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to place yourself in those uncomfortable positions, again, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So when a real crisis does occur, you're ready to tackle that crisis. And then you've got to allow yourself to be vulnerable by asking the people on your team what they think should be done. And let people know that even though I'm the leader, I don't have all the answers. If I had all the answers, I wouldn't need a team around me. So allow yourself to be vulnerable by sharing that with your people. Let them know that they're valuable. Let them know that their opinion matters. And then also share stories about times that you've made mistakes and have failed and how you were able to overcome those mistakes. Share stories about where you came from and the challenges that you had to rise above in order to get to the position you're in. So that's how I explain my leadership philosophy of character, competence, and resilience. It really comes down to those elements and the sub-elements that I just discussed.
I'm sure these are things that you expound upon throughout your 3 books, right?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. What inspired you to take the knowledge that you have and put it on paper in the form of a book?
Well, again, when I retired from the Army in 2019, I was reflecting on an experience I had back in 1983. And in 1983, when I left active duty at Fort Lewis, Washington, I decided to move back to northeastern Pennsylvania. I had a wife and a young son. He was 15 months old. And it had always been a dream of mine to bicycle across the United States. Not motorcycle, but bicycle. And so when we decided to move from Tacoma, Washington to northeastern Pennsylvania, moving from one coast to the other, I sat down with my wife at our kitchen table and I said, "Hey, how do you feel about us bicycling across the country?" And so in 1983, we made a cross-country journey with our 15-month-old son. I pulled him across the United States in a bicycle trailer. Took us 3 months. We spent 3 months on this bicycle journey, 2-man backpacking tent, 2 sleeping bags, and camping gear that we had strapped to our bicycles. And it was a interesting 3-month adventure back in 1983. And I kept a journal on that bike trip. And that journal sat in a shoebox for about 35 years. And when I retired from the Army in 2019, I took that journal out of the shoebox, and I was encouraged by my wife and my son to write a book about the journey. So I wrote the book about the journey. It's called The Ride of Our Lives, Lessons on Life, Leadership, and Love. And in that book, it really tells about the journey and the lessons we learned. And that was my first book. And then the second book I wrote was, it's named Iron Sharpened Leadership. It's based on Proverbs 27:17, which reads, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." It's all about finding people in your life that will help make you stronger, and then looking for people in your life that you could help become stronger. And I basically, that book is about the leadership philosophy that I already discussed. I just felt it was a good format to try to get my message out to many people. It's on both, a printed book that you get on Amazon. It's also on audiobook you can get on Amazon. And a lot of people have read it or listened to it. And it's just a way to share my lessons with many people out there who may never have had an opportunity to meet me, but they could still learn about the lessons I've learned and the mistakes I've made in order for them to become a better leader. And then the third book I wrote is called Leadership Sharpeners, which is a small pocket-sized leadership book with short stories and vignettes in it based on my experience that I'm hoping people will learn from.
All three, I love the ride of our lives seems, not that you're not spilling yourself into all these books, but I love the for lack of better words, the contrast as far as like one being a really focusing on this one ride, right? Focusing on this one moment that spanned across a few months, and versus the other ones where you're giving this information, or rather intelligence and knowledge to leaders that want to grow. So that's really interesting, and I'm actually looking really forward to reading all three books eventually, but especially The Ride of Our Lives seems like the one
Yes, me too.
I have so many questions.
And by the way, even in the leadership book, that's filled with stories. I'm a storyteller. I really believe people will learn more from stories than they will from concepts. So I think stories are important, and even leadership books are really story centric.
I'm looking forward to that. So that'll be really nice. And is the audio version of these books, is it in your voice?
Okay. One book has an audio version, and that's Iron Sharpened Leadership. And that's one of the mistakes I made in life. I should have read that book myself. But I turned it over to the publisher, and the publisher has a professional reading that book. But if I had to do it over again, I would have read that book myself. The Ride of Our Lives only comes in print version. I'm thinking someday I would like to transform that book also into an audio version. If I do that, I will read that book myself.
That could be, I feel like The Ride of Our Lives could be a movie. Like,
yes.
You know, Ron, it's funny you say that, because I would love to see that book become a movie, because I think it would be one of those feel good movies. And there's some instances that happen along that 3-month trip, as you could imagine, with my wife and my 15-month-old son, that got kind of emotional, and we had some challenges we had to overcome. So I agree with you. I think that would be a wonderful movie that people would enjoy.
Wow.
I'm just not sure if we could find a movie actor ugly enough to play me.
No.
I was about to say the inverse of that. I was like, man.
Yes.
Oh, that's
No, like firstly, how did you catch like a 15-month-old baby for 3 months in a bicycle? Like, is it a backpack or what?
No. I pulled my son Steven when we started the trip, 15 months old, in a bicycle trailer. And again, in 1983, the bicycle trailers were nothing like they are today. This was a big orange bicycle trailer. It looked like a small covered wagon. And he sat in there. We had a seatbelt and shoulder harness for him inside the trailer. And he looked out the back of the trailer as I was biking forward. And so he was very safe in there. And it worked out really well. He did well there. As a 15-month-old, just the motion of the bicycle moving along the road would kind of lull him to sleep. And then we would stop about every 2 hours and take him out of the trailer, and we would play with him and let him run around. So it was really a great bonding experience for our family. I mean, my wife and I and our son, we were all together nonstop for those 3 months. And so, again, we bonded. And I guess I did something right, because my wife and I had only been married a couple of years at that point, and now we've been married over 45 years. So it worked out.
Do you think or do you believe that it's moments like these that really bind couples and families?
Oh yeah, yeah. I do think and couples and families and even teams, in the workplace. I think when you go through a challenge, I talked about developing resiliency by finding ways to move out of your comfort zone. I mean, it really helped us become resilient by purposely moving out of our comfort zone. I mean, we didn't have to bicycle across the country. I mean, it's very difficult to make that trip. Through the Cascade Mountains, through the Rocky Mountains, through the Ozark Mountains, through the Appalachian Mountains, through the wind and the heat in Kansas. Very, very physically difficult trip, and or I should call it an adventure or a journey. But I think when a family or a team goes through those difficult times, it does create a bond. And I do think families and teams have to look for ways to move out of your comfort zone, to create those challenges. Because if you create challenges that you could overcome, when unfortunate real life challenges occur, I think you're better able to adapt and overcome those type of challenges if you train to adapt and overcome them.
What breed is it dog?
My dog Scotty is a mini golden doodle. So he's about 30 pounds. He's a cross between a golden retriever and a poodle.
Oh,
Man.
He's very intelligent. If he had thumbs, he'd be able to control the world. But as a dog, he doesn't have thumbs. But he's very smart, and we love him. He's a very personable dog.
I love that. That's so nice.
So, you spent over 40 years wearing the US Army uniform, right? And how does that kind of service shape a person's identity?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the way the Army shaped my identity is through the training I received. It gave me confidence. It gave me confidence in leading other people. And it gave me confidence in making decisions, very difficult decisions at times. And it gave me a purpose. And it helped me understand that there is something in life greater than ourselves that we have to seek to work for. And being in the Army, the Army has its own values, which I believe in. And those people serving in the Army have shared values. Excuse me. So by working within a team where you have those shared values and you have the same purpose and you believe in the mission, it does a lot for one's confidence, and it does a lot to help develop someone's self-worth. So that's what the Army has done for me.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions civilians have about the US Army?
That's a great question. I think the biggest misconception is that you simply give people orders and they're going to follow the order. That's a misconception. That is a misconception. Just as with any organization, in the Army, you have to get buy-in from people. You've got to show people that you're willing to do anything for them, so they in turn will be willing to do anything for you. It's not simply giving an order and having people carry it out. That's what a lot of people think the Army is. It's getting that buy-in from people. It's getting people to believe in you. It's being able to communicate a purpose to your particular team in the Army, and it's providing that vision to the people you lead. And the key is getting that buy-in so the people will follow you. People will not follow you if they don't believe in you, even in the Army. They'll find ways to undermine you if they think that your main objective is looking out for your own personal self-interest. You have to show people that you have their interest in mind. And that, I think that's the biggest misconception. I'm glad you asked that question.
It's you're essentially a teacher, a leader and a teacher, right? You'd have to, it's like you got these students that have to, you have to connect with them in a way to have them listen to you and understand what it is that you want them to do and things, and to mold them in the ways that you want to mold them, right?
Yeah, yeah, and even from the tactical and technical perspective, it's kind of Army doctrine is that the commander of an organization is the primary trainer. And so, yeah, you said it, you know, as a leader, you have to be a teacher. You have to be proficient in your tactical and technical tasks, but you also have to be proficient in terms of your character and your trustworthiness and those type of values. And you've got to, I think one of the best ways to teach when you're in a leadership position is you teach by your example. I think, you know, words are important, but the most important thing is your behavior. You know, people could hear what you say and maybe read what you write, but they're really going to be watching how do you behave. And that's the most important way to teach people, I believe, as a leader, is to model the behavior that you want them to exhibit.
Now, saying you were commanded in Iraq, right?
In Iraq?
Yes.
Yeah, I did command a brigade in Ramadi, Iraq in 05 and 06. It was a very challenging time. I have nothing but great things to say about the soldiers, the Marines, the Air Force personnel, and the sailors who I was honored to serve with there. And it was a very difficult mission. And these men and women from those services performed extremely well under a great deal of pressure. And it was an honor for me to serve with them. But yeah, I did have that honor, and I really value that experience I had, and I value the fact that I was able to serve with such great men and women there.
Being there in such a in a situation where anything can happen, right? How do you make decisions related to life and death, where how do you make life and death decisions with incomplete information?
Yeah, and you know, it is important to make decisions with less than perfect information. I think some of the ways you do that is by getting out there on the ground yourself and seeing with your own eyes what the troops are feeling and seeing out there. Also asking for the opinions of the people you lead and see what they have to say about it. Because even though I could get out there and I could do battlefield circulation and get a chance to look into the eyes of my troops and see what they're really feeling and ask them what they're thinking, they're the ones that are out there every day in these certain areas. So, you know, you have to ask them what they think and get their opinion on what you think the right decision should be. And you have to stay true to your values when making those decisions. You can't mortgage your values for a particular outcome that you're looking for. You have to stay true to your values and factor those values into the decision-making process. I think that's an important thing. A lot of people, you know, go through a decision-making process of understanding, you know, what the mission is, doing a mission analysis, understanding what resources you have and what the limitations and constraints are, et cetera, and then developing certain courses of action, and then analyzing those courses of action and comparing those courses of action and eventually making a decision. But at some point in that decision-making process, you have to factor values in to that process, the values of the organization, for example. And I think we've seen failures, especially in the business world, where some companies failed because they didn't factor their values into their decision-making process. They made decisions, you know, that were unethical or illegal, which caused chief executive officers to go to jail and cost stockholders to lose a lot of money and cost the business, insolvency, where the company actually went out of business. And I think if we look back in business history over the last 30 years, we could see that happened. So I think those are the things you have to do to make decisions under very difficult circumstances.
We talk about decisions, important decisions. We talk about, leadership and correlating that with being, a teacher in a sense. You went to multiple schools, got multiple degrees. I'm curious, just upon doing research and stuff, I wanted to know what was the difference, or what is the difference rather, between military schools and say regular schools?
Yeah, I think military schools, most of them are more hands-on. Now, of course, if one goes to a technical school, there's a lot of hands-on training in a technical school. But if you go to your basic university, a lot of that is based on, professor instruction, reading books, doing work in small teams, and based on the research of certain professors. But a lot of those academics are not as hands-on as possibly they could be. But in the military, especially in the Army, most of the instruction is based on getting your hands on equipment and actually training with your hands on that equipment. And another thing that's real big in the Army is what we call an after-action review. So if you do a collective task, let's say you're an infantry unit and you have to assault an objective, and you're in a training environment, and whatever it is, a platoon or a company or whatever size element assaults that objective. After that exercise, you get to group together, and we call this an after-action review, where you focus on talking to the lowest ranking soldiers first and ask them, hey, what do you think went well with this task we just did? And then you ask them, hey, what do you think didn't go so well? What do you think we need to improve? And then what general lessons did we learn? And then you go out and you do another iteration, or maybe even a third iteration, by incorporating those things that the soldiers brought out about, hey, this is what we should change, this is what we should do differently, or this is what we should continue to do. These are lessons we learned. And I always like to say, lessons learned are good, but lessons applied are even better. So it's one thing to learn a lesson. It's an entirely different thing to apply that lesson. And so by doing 2 or 3 iterations of the same collective task and doing those after-action reviews in between, we have an opportunity to actually apply those lessons. And businesses could do the same thing. If a business is conducting a project, there's especially, let's say it's going to be a year-long project to implement a information technology system. At different time frames through the life cycle of this 1 year long project, the project manager could get the team together, say after 3 months, and say, okay, guys, we're 3 months into this project. What have we been doing well that we want to continue doing? What aren't we doing so well that we want to change? What general lessons did we learn? And then over the next 2 or 3 months, really focus on applying those lessons rather than just capturing those lessons.
Man, I think I'm going to have to get my weight down. I'm going to have to start running again. I'm going to have to get my fitness back up and get my health right, because I want to make sure that my monthly premium is low when I start paying for this life insurance policy. Go ahead and get yourself a life insurance policy on iCoverDirect.com. You can get one in as quick as 5 minutes. No medical exams, no agent's involvement at all. Just you, a stable internet connection, your phone or your laptop, a few questions, a little bit of your time, like I said. And yeah, at least see how much it's going to cost you. I mean, you'll be in disbelief, I promise you. Back to the show. That sounded, Nishant, that line sounded
Yes.
like a lovely variation of another line that the quote that he gave us was similar to the knowledge is not power, applied knowledge is power quote. But
There you go. Yeah,
that was great. That's why me and him looked at each other. We're like, this sounds familiar, but no, we liked it. Well, can you give us this quote one more time? What was it?
No, I just said lessons learned are good, but lessons applied are even better.
Yes.
I like that. I like that. That's good.
That could be a t-shirt. So much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could be a t-shirt.
that's awesome. Wow.
After leading a division, how difficult is it to transition into a civilian life?
I think there's a lot of similarities
Okay.
between leading in the military and leading in civilian life.
Mhm.
Um, I think that whole leadership philosophy that I talk about, various elements of leadership that we think are good elements of a leader applied to the Army or civilian life. So I don't think there's too much difference. I really don't. I think it's really finding the right people, understanding that character is more important than talent. Now both are important. You need people with character, you need people with talent. But I think if you had to choose one, character is more important because it's pretty hard to teach someone to have good character. It's much easier to teach them how to do a particular task. I really think that's important. It's also helping people understand that the only thing consistent about life is that change is inevitable. And then as we go through change, what is our attitude as we're going through change? How do we grow as we go through change? How do we negotiate change? And again, leading by example in terms of your behavior when a change is coming in an organization. And how do you model what the proper behavior should be as you're going through a change initiative in a company? Because change is going to happen. So you got to figure out the ways to best negotiate it, the best way to learn from it, etc. So many of those things I think are the same, whether you're in the military or whether you're in the civilian profession. And again, just looking out for your people and showing your people that you care more about them than you care about yourself. You have their interest in mind more than you have your own interest in mind. With that said, leaders still do have to engage in self-care. A lot of times I say leaders must care more about their people that they lead than they care about themselves. However, leaders still have to engage in self-care. You still have to work on your physical fitness, your mental fitness, your spiritual fitness. Because if you don't work on those things as a leader, you're going to fail the people that you're leading. So yes, you must care about others, but you still have to take the time to get enough sleep, drink enough water, eat the right food, not consume too much alcohol. All of those things you've got to really focus on caring for yourself so you can do a better job caring for others.
I guess to expound further more on that, what does your day look like when it comes to wanting to exercise all these different facets of and checking all the fitness boxes that you laid out? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, personally, I like to start my day at 5:30. I like to get up at 5:30. I like to, the first thing I do when I get up is I take the dog for a walk, about a little over a mile walk. Then I come back, and I'm the type of person who is more mentally attentive in the morning than I am in the evening. So that's the time I like to read. Sometimes it'll be a Bible verse. Sometimes it'll just be another book that I could gain insight from. I like to do that. I like to write in the morning. When we're done with this podcast today, I'm going to go to the gym. I usually like to go to gym a little bit later in the morning because there's not as many people there. And with my schedule now that, I still do leadership consulting and leadership training, but I still, I don't do that on a daily basis. So I do have the time to go to the gym a little bit later in the morning. So I definitely like to work out. I think strength training is extremely important. I like to have the opportunity to swim in the pool and just find ways to stay physically active. In terms of emotional fitness, I like to focus on an element of emotional fitness that I think I could get better at, and that is self-control. Really learning how to control my emotions. And then in terms of spiritual fitness, it's getting out in nature. It's looking at the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset. It's reading spiritual material, whether it be the Bible or the wisdom of other great people throughout history. So I really do try to focus on those 4 elements. And, there's really a 5th element too, which you could call social fitness. It's to make sure that you're engaging with people. I think, especially as one gets older, having social relationships are very important. And this is for your listeners, your listeners who are working remotely these days. You really have to work hard on making sure you get face-to-face engagement with other people, to build that social fitness. So again, those elements of fitness: physical, mental, by reading, by trying to learn new things, emotional, by really focusing on, hey, this is being self-aware of your emotions, understand how you're feeling, controlling your emotions, self-motivation, moving yourself from a negative emotion to a more positive emotion, empathy as you're engaging people, really try to understand what they're feeling and how they're feeling, and then relationship management. And then the social engagement, social fitness, find ways to engage others and be active with other people rather than with a computer. and then spiritual, you've got to develop yourself spiritually too, whatever that might mean to somebody. It could be a formal religion, or it could be just a way to get in touch with a higher power of some sort or a higher purpose. And that could be a myriad of things, getting out in nature, reading, wisdom from whatever book you think is the book you could gain wisdom from. And, just maybe engaging in spiritual discussions with people that you trust. And those are the things I think you have to focus on in order to keep yourself fit as a leader and as a person, for that matter.
What's the difference between spirituality and religion?
I don't think I do engage in a formal religion. I'm a Christian. But I don't think you necessarily have to have a formal religion in order to be a spiritual person. I think to be a spiritual person is just understand that there's something going on in this world, something going on in this universe that is greater than yourself. Realizing that there's a higher power of some kind, whether you believe in God or not. And really, to me, spiritual fitness is understanding that we have to look out for our fellow person. Just being engaged in understanding what humanity is all about, and being willing to help other people in the world. So whether you think there's a heaven or a hell or not, I just think it's the right thing to do is to try to be kind and good to other people, to try to be as generous as you could be. So I think that's how I would frame what spiritual fitness is really all about.
There must be ways to unwind after you check off all these boxes. What are the things that you like to do that you I know you said you mentioned reading books, and I see that that's something that you like to do also, but like, is there anything else? Like, do you like watching movies, or what else do you like to do?
I definitely like watching movies. I like movies that make me feel good, or have an ethical purpose behind them. Movies, I like movies like Apollo 13, like Remember the Titans, and just movies that kind of affect me emotionally in some way. I like movies like that. I just recently took up golf, so I get out there on the golf course. I'm not that good, but I'm getting better. And actually, it's good in a certain ways. It's a good way to unwind, and it's a good way to try to learn something new for me. So that's effective. And then another hobby I just took up, believe it or not, is painting seashells. So since we live here in Florida, we're about 10 minutes from the beach, and I like to collect shells from the beach and then use acrylic paint to paint various designs on the seashells. It could be a seascape, like the paint a picture of the sun setting over the ocean and a palm tree, or just various pictures that are kind of associated with Florida. And then I like to give those shells to people. I don't sell them, but I like to give those seashells to people that I meet, people in the neighborhood, that type of thing.
I love
Do you have
that.
one right now? I would love to see it.
If you give me a second, I could.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We,
I'll write
we
I'll get one. Okay, here are two seashells I painted. This guy,
Wow.
hopefully you can see that. And then
Yes.
I also painted a larger one.
and he put two smaller seashells on it as like
Yeah. With
wow.
this one I put some beach sand on it. I know you can't see that, but there's beach sand, and then I put two smaller shells kind of on the shore here. And so
Oh man.
yeah, so I like to say that these seashells are painted by a local Englewood, Florida artist.
Yeah. You could actually make a business out of it by selling it,
I probably could, but right now I'm just focused on giving them to people.
oh
Yeah.
But like I say, it's a way to unwind,
yeah.
and it's a way to get my mind thinking about something else, and use that artistic part of my mind, and then I people feel good when I give them a seashell, and I say, hey,
Yes.
Or a lot of times I'll let people come into my house, and I have a whole bunch of them lined up, and I'll let them pick out whichever one they want.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that. That's really cool.
So that's a new hobby of mine. So I think with the and going to the gym helps me unwind too. I like going to the gym. I like going for walks. I mean, that helps me unwind.
That's cool.
I know it's part of my normal routine. It still helps me unwind.
That's nice.
And then I like to I love to spend time with my wife. I love to spend time with friends. I love to have people visit, and just I do like to have a cigar occasionally with friends, or and just kind of enjoy ways to like to have a cup of coffee with friends. Just some ways to enjoy sitting around and talking.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now tell us more about your family. So you got one. You mentioned your son earlier, and then
I have two sons, both in their early 40s. Stephen, the one I pulled across the United States, was in the Marine Corps. He now works in construction. And then my other son, Timothy, was in the Army. He was in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I was only in Iraq. I was never in Afghanistan, but Timothy was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And now he's a law enforcement officer. And so that's what they do. And, I have two grandchildren, and just try to engage with the family as much as I could. It's really important.
I love that. That's cool. Now, were your children going into the military? Was that something that was a strong value for you to ensure that they kind of follow that same path, or was that something that they saw in you and then they kind of decided, you know what, this is something that we also want to carry forward?
I think it's more something they saw in me. I think the military is it's a personal decision. People should want to do it on their own. I think it's a mistake to try to force somebody into it. I'm glad they both chose that course because it's good life experience. But no, I didn't necessarily encourage them. I certainly was proud when they decided to do that. But I think it was better to leave it up to be their decision than mine.
I'm sure you were real happy when they told you that they made that decision, right? Or when they were making it.
Yeah, it was, because I think it's important. I think it's a good life experience, and it's a way to serve, right. And I was happy that they chose that path.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like my grandfather, he's a retired lieutenant colonel. So I always wanted to be like him, but unfortunately I'm not medically fit to be in the army. So
yeah. Well, I like to say there's other ways to serve besides wearing a military uniform. you know, by doing things to help other people in some way in your community is a way to serve. So I like to say you don't have to wear a military uniform to serve. There's many other ways to serve.
That's the one thing about doing this digitally. It sucks because like we can't just like tap each other on the shoulder or something like
No,
that.
but it's like a normal conversation. It's
Yeah,
okay.
It is.
yeah. So, I was gonna ask. You see all these military movies and military video games where the likes of Call of Duty and Battlefield and these movies that kind of dramatize a lot of things that for whatever reason it may be, whether it's for them to make the film more engaging, they might skew things and things like that. When you watch these things or you see these things, what are your thoughts about it? Like, do you think it's almost like a parody, or do you think it's an interesting take on what it is that you've actually lived? What are your thoughts on those media?
Yeah, I watch very few military movies. I will not watch a military movie about Iraq at all. I just won't. Only because I just don't think it could be replicated. The emotions and what really happened over there. You know, I've probably the most recent military movies I've watched. I did see American Sniper. I did see Lone Survivor. And you know, some movies that I really thought were fantastic was, you know, Saving Private Ryan, you know, World War II movie was very good. Band of Brothers was very, very well done, I thought. But again, they were both based on World War II. But I've never seen a military video game in my life. I never have. I never will. I just don't get into that. I'll leave that to the people who decide to make them or the people who decide to buy them and use them. But it's just not something I'm into.
No, certainly.
So Rana is getting married this year. Any marriage advice for him?
Rana is getting married this year.
Yes.
Any advice? Let's see. I think the best advice is to know that you're going to have disagreements at times, and not everything is going to be rosy. But you know, don't give up right away. You know, I mean, hey, sometimes, you know, one might have to, but just understand that there's going to be challenges, and you just got to see those challenges through. Love that person, be true to that person, and I think that's the focus. I think that's the best advice I could give you.
In the beginning, I'm sure it's hard to reserve time for yourself, but what's your advice as far as not losing yourself or making sure that you still flesh out the goals and ambitions that you have as a family man?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for my wife and I think it's helpful to have departures now and then. You know, like I was deployed, I was away for 18 months on the deployment to Iraq. Back in the year 2000, I had to go to Lithuania, which is a Baltic country, for a year. It was unaccompanied. You know, just various other travels in the military, or now in my civilian occupation as a leadership consultant. You know, I'm away for weeks at a time, and for us, it's healthy. I think those times to be apart are healthy. I think you know, what worked for us is my wife has her interests and I have my interests. They don't always have to be the same. You know, she has her things that she loves to do, and I have my things that I love to do, and we're both okay with that. But then at the same token, we do find ways to be together and enjoy similar activities together. That's important too. So I think it's a whole mixed bag of balancing those things. and not being jealous of one another in terms of what our interests are or the time that we may be focused on certain interests that we have, but be happy for each other when we have opportunities to engage in the things that we like to engage in, even without the other person. I hope that answered your question.
It did. It certainly did, and I think that's a very important thing that so I love music a lot. Like
Yeah.
music and video games. Those are my two like things that I love. So I go to a lot of concerts, or I did. Now I'm saving up for the wedding, but so when I was going to a lot of concerts, that was a time, right, Nishant? Every week you're
Yeah.
like so when I was going to a lot of concerts, and say she was in town, like I told you earlier, she's from Orlando, and or if I was in town over there and there was a plan, say there was a plan that I knew I was going to go to this concert over there or over here when she came, when the day comes and I'm like, hey, like I can get you a ticket, or she will kind of, no, I'm okay, I'll stay home. And honestly, she'll kind of give me hints to say you should stay home too. But my thing
Ah.
is, like, I told you I wanted to go to this concert. So then now I gauge everything on a system of, do I want this? Do I want to do this more than she does not want me to do it, or vice versa? And that's the system that I kind of go with now. And now, she's happy because we're saving for this wedding, so I don't go to concerts that much anymore anyway. So, but that's the one of those things where even I would tell her, like, there's things that you could do alone, or that I could do alone, and it shouldn't be an issue, right? So certainly I think that's just something that we would have to learn slowly through time. So
Yeah, you're going to have to grow into that, and
yeah,
but it's worked for my wife and I.
that's cool. That's lovely. Thank you. I appreciate all those words. Every time Nishant brings this up with the guest, I do hold on to it, and I do reflect on it throughout the day. So
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your upcoming marriage.
thank you so much. It's in August
Uh,
8th. So
that's awesome.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
How many countries have you traveled to?
Oh, just many. I mean, just about every country in Europe, a lot of companies, or a lot of countries in the Middle East. We have later on in 2026 plan on getting down to Argentina for vacation. Yeah, just many countries. Especially, the last 3 years of my military career, as I mentioned earlier, I was stationed at United States Army Europe. So with that role, I was to just about every country in Europe. I think there's 54 countries in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. And also had opportunities to go down to Israel on a regular basis. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have that type of travel, which is, you could always learn so much when you travel about other people, about other cultures.
Yes.
So I've been very fortunate in that regard.
have you? I'll ask the question for Nishant. Have you been to India?
No, I haven't, but I'll tell you, my friend Walter, who was an accountant, had many opportunities to go to India, and he speaks very highly of the country. He loves India. And he says the people are so gracious there, and so generous. And it makes me want to go someday. I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to, but again, my friend Walter really loves the country.
Hi again. I know you're pissed off looking at me or Rana or both of us trying to sell life insurance or just trying to sell iCover direct to you. But let me be honest. It's the best thing you can do in 2026. Get a life insurance policy for your loved ones right now. Protect their future for any mishaps in the future. You have no idea, right? Life is unexpected. So go to iCoverdirect.com, answer a few medical questions, answer a few personal questions, and you'll have a life insurance policy in just 5 minutes. You don't have to give any medical exams. You can ignore all the documents, all the paperwork, everything, and no agents, right? Just you, your phone, and your loved ones. And back to the show.
Well, you got somebody that would gladly see you if he's not here already in Bhubaneswar, which is in a state called Odisha that's not talked about too much, but it's a beautiful place. I went and visited Nishant for the first time actually last month.
Oh,
It was pretty neat. So that was the first time. So our company did. So we have two founders in our company, and one of the founders is from India, and he's from a state called Tamil Nadu, which is short for or they call it TN for short. And Chennai, I don't know if you heard the city Chennai. So essentially every year they do a company internal conference in Chennai where the whole company kind of just meets there. And I was able to meet Nishant for the first time, and that was so he took me back to his state. Everything you said as far as people being gracious and loving, and just the culture being rich, it was all of that. And it's quite neat because his state is one that a lot of people don't actually know about, which is kind of interesting. When you go there, like, people are like, where's that? People in India are like, where's that? So it's kind of like I guess the Montana of India, or like
okay, yeah. Well, I'm glad you have that opportunity, and
yeah.
maybe perhaps someday I'll be able to travel there.
Yeah, it'd be
Sure.
neat.
Then probably I'll meet you.
All right, sounds good.
Oh, certainly. But man, we appreciate everything. Nishant, did you want to ask him anything else before we
Yeah.
closed out? Okay, yeah, no, we both appreciate the time you responding to us, without knowing us, and with us being a very small channel, you still gave us the time and energy, and that's something that we really, really appreciate. And so thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your service to this country, for all the years that you've served. It's something that I can't wait to really dive into with the books. My book backlog is quite big, but I think I'm going to have to prioritize, especially the Ride of Our Lives book. That is one book that has now certainly reached the top of the backlog that I feel like I need to go out.
Well, thanks for saying that, Ron. And again, you get that on Amazon. It's easy to get.
Awesome.
And I really enjoyed being with you both today. I know it's a podcast that you've started, relatively recently, within the last year. And it's always, if I could help somebody out, I'm always willing to help somebody out. And, when I saw your invitation, I checked out the podcast and I said, sure, I'll do this. And it also gives me an opportunity to continue to get the message out of what I think is important but I think everybody is in a leadership position, whether you are in a formal leadership position or an informal leadership position, everybody leads something. And, these things that I talk about in terms of character, competence, resilience, I think could help anyone. So always a pleasure for me to have an opportunity to get that message out. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh man. And I guess I'll close on this and I'll ask you this. Any plans of a fourth book, or are you working?
Yeah. I've been thinking of a fourth book that's going to focus on mindset, a positive versus negative mindset, a growth versus a fixed mindset, an abundant versus a scarcity mindset, and an offensive versus a defensive mindset.
Wow.
And it's a book I'd like to write. I've already started on it. It's probably going to take me a while to write it because I want to take my time. And it's going to be stories in it as well. But I think having the right mindset in life is so important. And some people don't think about it enough, or some people get hung up on a mindset that isn't what could be as effective a mindset as what you should have. So I think what you think about certainly factors into the way you behave. That's something I'm working on. And the working title is Iron Sharpened Mindset.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's good. I was going to ask that. And then obviously it's all these things take time and take their own time. And I don't wish to pressure you at all with this question, but is there a slated release date or an idea of when this book would come out?
No, it's probably going to be at least a year. So no release date yet, but something I want to take my time with and just enjoy the journey of writing it.
I love it. Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, until then, hopefully we will catch up on our backlog. Nishant and I will be able to read these books and talk about it in our not what do you call it? Like our little private book club that we have where we say we'll read these books and then we only get like halfway through it and then but no, these are books that I think we would certainly want to read, especially now that we've having met you. This is now something that we now have a slated interest towards. So thank you again so much for your time.
And just remember, when you get as big as Joe Rogan or Jocko, please invite me back when you're that big. Okay?
Yeah, certainly.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what is that? Maybe like 10,000? No. That's like 1 million subscribers or something, right? That's
There are
like
millions, man.
A whole bunch.
a whole bunch. Yeah. No, we will take you up on that. We will certainly
All right.
take you up on that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Whatever benchmark we meet where we feel like, you know what, I think it's time we get Mr. John back.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Yeah, you take care. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye now. I really appreciate it.